I was at a point in my life where I was feeling a whole different set of feelings and wasn't really sure how I was going to move forward. Like they say, people see the glory, they don't see the story. If we don't try, who knows what'll happen? We really have to just push ourselves and understand that, hey, slow motion is better than no motion. Even if life does feel hard in the moment, as long as we keep working, we keep moving forward, it all works out. All of us are valuable. We can all do so much. Recognize that where you are right now and how you feel right now does not define who you are and what you can be in the future.
Highest Version Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Highest Version Podcast. I'm your host, Evan Wang, and on this podcast, we talk about falling in love with the process of getting better every day and becoming the highest version of ourselves. Today's guest is Evan Wang, a fellow UMass Amherst graduate and a graduate with his MBA from MIT. Evan is climbing the corporate ladder as he is currently the Assistant Vice President in Finance, and I can only assume he's continuing to climb that ladder. Evan is super passionate about financial literacy and growing long-term wealth. And that's why he's here today, to teach us about finance. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Evan. Hey, Evan. How you doing, man? Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Randy.
Dude, it's been 4 years since we've seen each other, huh?
It's been a while since I saw you last time, but it's good to be back.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming on. And I got to say, man, I'm excited to get into what we're going to talk about today, which is financial literacy, financial health, because I feel like people in my people in 20s and 30s, we're still learning how to build financial health, right?
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I want to get into the Funko Pop of the episode. And the Funko Pop I chose for you is Iron Man.
Wow.
And the reason why I chose Iron Man is because, well, as we know, Iron Man represents a lot of things. He represents wealth. He represents, that kind of charisma. He also represents a hard work ethic and drive, and super intelligent. All those characteristics I see in you, because even though we've only, seen each other a few times or talked to each other a few times, I feel like you embody this entrepreneurial mindset, and that's who Iron Man is. Yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on what you think of my comparison between you and Iron Man here.
Wow. Randy, thank you for the very generous comparison. I only aspire to be just a percentage of how influential Tony Stark was in the Iron Man series. So thank you for having me, and thank you for that comparison.
Awesome, man. All right, this is a question I ask all my guests, and it's pretty much a good foundation to my brand. And how is your mental health nowadays?
Mental health has actually gotten a lot better over the past year. I think one of the biggest things that has helped a lot is just working on consistent systems of thinking and consistent habits that have honestly made life a lot more enjoyable and a lot more rewarding once you really start understanding where you're moving, where you're navigating, where you're currently at.
And it's wonderful that you bring about systems and habits, because I think those are the structures that allow us to be successful. I mean, one of the biggest books when personal growth and self-development is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he says that you need to build these certain habits and systems if you want to change or be this kind of person to identify with. And before we dive into that, I want to talk about, your passion for finance and where did that come from? Like, you, out of all things growing up, you could have picked anything, but finance was the route that you took. How did you get there? Where did that come from?
Finance, I believe, is the language of the world. I mean, if you look at finance in terms of two different angles, you can look at it in terms of how you personally manage your own money through the lens of personal finance, which I think is very fascinating, very interesting, and something I think about a lot. And also the idea that finance is one of the direct drivers of the world in terms of how the economy functions or how society is structured,
right?
How people make decisions. So I think just understanding these two different lenses of finance over the past few years has really helped me to just better understand what I like to do, how I like to think about different problems, and ultimately how you can kind of optimize a lot of different decisions in your day-to-day life, whether personally or professionally, to make a lasting impact.
Right. Yeah, money is something I've been thinking about a lot recently.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, granted, like it's something that I've always thought about, especially with, picking a job that I'm applying for.
Sure.
Things that will give me freedom to do the things that I aspire to do, such as this brand, right? I need money to function and put this brand to make sure that it is functioning, and, getting new equipment or finding new softwares to use, et cetera, et cetera. Money is a drive to a lot of things. And sometimes I feel like that money can keep us I wouldn't say keep us in a cage, but in a way, money can do that. So I guess, how has your relationship with money evolved over time?
Yeah, so money is just definitely, all things considered, just a tool. Mm-hmm. I mean, money itself will not make anyone happier. It definitely can cause a lot of things that make people happy. But I think some of the people with the greatest joys in their life are those who are happy with what they have, no matter how much they have.
Yeah.
And that actually doesn't even necessarily have to be tied to a financial number, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, just thinking about my own life personally. I mean, there was a time when I was really into, for instance, like collecting sneakers and clothes. I used to think that was just like such an exciting thing to be thinking about constantly. I mean, there was a time in my life when I had over probably 25 or 30 pairs of different sneakers, all limited releases, all extremely hard to find, but also very collectible.
Wow.
And I also really liked, for instance, like streetwear. Like, it depended on what major brand was dropping what limited collection for that week, but it was just always so exciting to wake up and just know that there was a chance that in my hands in just a couple of days, I'd be able to wear something that very few people had.
Yeah.
Or just had like a very symbolic, or just like a very hard to get aspect of it. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, as I've gotten older, I've definitely started caring less about what the brand was. And the evolution of that is naturally moving then towards what the clothing that you buy actually looks like, regardless of brand.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, right, if people see that something is super limited or they really want it, but they maybe feel like it's not worth it to them financially, they'll just look for a dupe, right? They'll look for something that looks similar but has a similar fit, and it's like, okay, I can see myself wearing this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who made it, just matters what it looks like.
Yeah.
But then the evolution of that one step further, which is where I'm actually in right now, it's not so much what the brand is, what it looks like, it's more so the quality of the materials, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what are we actually wearing and what are we putting on our body?
Yeah.
A lot of the clothing that you see nowadays for sale, it's all a bunch of different plastics, right? You're just paying a lot of money for plastic clothing. Try to figure out where you can find things that are made from high quality materials, and ultimately stuff that's long lasting, mm-hmm. good for the environment, and keeps you happy with a minimalistic angle.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of us go through a different relationship with money. Like you said, I honestly didn't even know you were in that realm of, limited edition
quite
stuff.
A while.
I
can show you the receipts. I was into this stuff for years.
I'm so surprised that when we first met, I didn't come across as like that you were into that realm. But that's pretty
change.
Cool. Change will do that. And that's, going to the evolution of money. Like, we go from, this kind of, okay, if I want something, I want to, be able to have enough money to get it so a lot of consuming and switching that intention to functionality.
Yeah.
I kind of compare it to, it's a funny story. When you said about what's the brand, like the product focusing on the product at hand versus like the brand. It's so funny because Michelle's sister has she gave us a Lululemon fanny pack.
Sure.
And I was like, this fanny pack looks oddly familiar. And when we came back home, I was like, yo, this is the same fanny pack that I bought off of Amazon, $20 cheaper.
Sure.
It's just because the Lululemon brand is on it, it's just more expensive.
Right.
And I was like, why would you pay $20 more for a fanny pack? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that's where, as we get older or we change our relationship with money, we realize, okay, is this actually worth the amount that I'm paying for? And then when I was talking about, functionality too, it's also when we're younger, right? And in terms of, if we're talking about body physique, because I'm on my own fitness journey right now.
Yeah.
You focus on a lot okay, how can I get my muscles to be really big?
Yeah.
But then when you get older, you kind of realize that functionality may be more important. And I feel like that's something that's getting more important because people are focusing on my knees aren't working too well, or my shoulder mobility isn't the best. So it's funny how these things, whether that's money or physical, anything, like there's an evolution as we get older. And, we're not trying to sound like unks or old heads here, but like there is an evolution with everyone.
Right. And I think one of the biggest things too, it's just like you can try to impress other people by spending more money, but at the same time, it's always been true that it's better to be rich than to look rich.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's two ways of thinking about this, right? So a lot of people, when they're first like, at least growing up, my experience was like, when you're finally starting to work, you're finally starting to get some income coming in, the first thing you want to do is just buy a really nice jacket.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You want to get something that's like a very like recognizable brand. You want to buy a bag. You want to buy some shoes. You want to buy something that really shows that you're finally starting to get it. You finally have it figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And you finally are someone that has a little bit of money in their pocket.
Yeah.
And then the next evolution of that is all of a sudden, wow, I can afford all the clothing I ever wanted. I probably don't need another jacket with a logo on it. Let me get a really nice car. Let me get a car that has a logo that a lot of people would recognize, that has very good specs, and is just expensive enough where people know that, okay, this person has some real money.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next evolution of that, from at least what I've seen around me, is that then people start thinking about, okay, where do I want to live?
Mm-hmm.
Am I just going to upgrade my apartment and live in a really new building with a lot of modern amenities? Do I want to actually start thinking about buying a place? And how much will that cost me? And what will that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And then this takes shape in the form of your zip code, where you actually then think about what kind of space you have for your children and all of that. And then what I think is one of the next and later stages of thinking about this would then just be, okay, I have all the things I ever wanted materially. What do I want to do in terms of my family? How many kids can I afford? How many kids do I want? And at least in terms of just what I've seen around me, that then becomes a major focal point of, okay, you're tying a lot of things to how you're able to really show people that you really have it going on. You have a lot of things, a lot of income coming in. You can afford whatever you want. But then it just goes from also an evolution of buying all these different things to also thinking about where you could spend your money in other ways. So either you would then spend it on experiences like traveling, which I personally think is one of the biggest joys in life, or you can start thinking about longer term, like how you start doing a little bit of legacy planning. What kind of children do I want to raise? How many children do I want to raise? Where do I want them to grow up? Right? Because at the same time, you also would then think a little bit bigger at a certain point in one's life, as I've seen around me, where you then start thinking about, okay, how do I want to make the lives of other people around me better? And how do I really want to give back to this world by understanding the perspectives of different people and really building a longer lasting legacy that is just bigger than the clothing I wear or the car I drive or even the place that I own in whatever zip code.
Yeah. No, it's a lot. We will go through a lot of chapters in our life and rethink all things as we grow more with resources and tools. I want to go back to your point of building habits and systems, and you track a lot of those. You track your goals, your habits, your, anything that can help you towards your self-growth. Where did that idea of tracking come from? Like, I know that thing doesn't just pop out of nowhere. Like, what initiated you to be like, okay, I need to track my habits, I need to track my finances, I need to track the goals that I'm looking to achieve?
I think fundamentally, for instance, like personal finance is something that I only really started to track a couple of years ago, and only this past year in the level of detail that I'm like finally proud of right now. So for instance, when I was living in New York City before business school, and when I was in business school, I still made sure that I understood how much money was coming in every week and how much money was going out, but it kind of ended there. And there wasn't really a longer term picture that I was building towards. It was more so just making sure that there were more weeks where I was in the green than weeks that I was in the red.
Right.
But how much green was in the green and how much red was in the red, I kind of just brushed off as, oh, I'll figure that out later on. Flash forward to the past year or so, where I've gotten really serious about this, because I've realized you can only be braver than what you don't understand when you understand what you don't understand. So one of the clearest examples of that is just making sure you understand how much money is coming in every single week, how much money is leaving every single week, and ultimately, where is that money going? If it's going in areas that fill you with a lot of joy, great. If it's going out of your pocket into areas where you feel like you barely even use the subscription service, or it's just not something that you've really thought about too much of, then I'd say, okay, maybe we can move that money somewhere else where it can be more useful. And if you're also not keeping an eye on, how much money is getting saved and invested or getting put aside for a bigger purchase in the future, like a home or starting a family or marriage or all of that, then it's really hard to get ahead of life, because life will always find a way to take everything that you haven't been like keeping an eye out on, because there are always times in life where things move at a really fast pace, or distractions come up, or these unexpected expenses come up, or all of a sudden you really want to take that weekend trip, but you're not really sure where the money's going to come from. You just know you have 30 days to pay it off in the future, so you just put it on a credit card and you just worry about that later. But if you really keep an eye on where all of this is going, then I'd say life just becomes a lot more enjoyable. And I've, ever since started keeping track of everything, been enjoying life a lot more.
You did say clarity reduces anxiety.
Yeah.
Expand on that for me. Like, why does that jump out to you so much?
With how the older we all get and the more uncertainty we deal with on a daily basis, the more overwhelming it can feel to actually start making a plan as to where you'll be moving in the future or where you currently are at. I feel like it's kind of a give and take where, the earliest 2 decades of your life, right? Everyone, at least those growing up in the United States, typically go through the same path, right? You're born, you go through school, you think about whether or not you want to pursue higher education, maybe anywhere from 4 to 10 more years after that. Yeah. And then afterwards, you're just kind of dropped into the broader horizon of life where there's not really a set schedule where, okay, it's like, Randy, it's time for you to, start working this job for this many years and then make a move to this point, or you're supposed to then settle down or have everything figured out at this age. There's not really a clear direction as to when you're supposed to be making that next big jump. But I will make the argument that if you're at least financially equipped and you know where you are at this very point in time, you can at least start building a roadmap in terms of where you want to be, and actually use those dollar bills that we talked about earlier to actually use as a tool to help set you up for success moving forward into the future. Like for instance, if you are thinking about like buying a place in the next few years, it would be nice to know how much cash you have saved at the end of every single year to actually put down towards as a down payment versus just stumbling around. Oh, I'll get there eventually. But it just becomes a lot easier once you know what you're walking into and understanding just the cold hard math. Because math, unlike all of us, is very, very straightforward. It either is something or it's not.
Right. Yeah. And I like how, because I said that because that's something you mentioned to me offline about clarity reducing anxiety. And it touches the connection there. It's something that I never, really put together. Because when we think about anxiety, the main root of that is we are scared of the unknown. Yeah. And having the clarity and understanding where you are to be reflective. I feel like that's the first step in whatever you're in. If you're in a rut about your financial health, understand where you are. Like you said, what's coming in, what's going out. A lot of people don't realize the subscriptions that they're subscribed to.
Sure.
And that's like lots of dollars that you could be putting towards either a car payment or towards savings towards a new car, right? But having the clarity to understand what is right now in the situation that you're in will help you move forward to the path that you want to. And that's the same thing with mental health too. We don't realize these habits and unconscious things that we think about, whether that's negatively or positively, or whether that's part of our own identity. We don't make ourselves aware of that. Therefore, we're confused on who am I as a person?
Yeah.
How is my mental health? I don't know. So if you take the time to either financial health wise, create a budget, see where your money is going in and out. Mental health wise, realizing, am I sad? Am I happy? Am I happy where I'm at? And asking yourself these very hard questions, which surprisingly people can't answer. A lot of people like to push that away.
Yeah.
But if you sit down with yourself with a journal or whatever and just be like, what is going right for me? What do I like about it? What do I not like about it? And making decisions on how are you going to progress forward. And I feel like a lot of people miss that step. It's a very overrated step.
Yeah.
Because people always just want to push into like, what's the future versus like, where am I in? Where am I now? Right. And I think, again, that's for me, like, that's just the first step that everybody needs to take, especially with accomplishing goals or figuring out where you want to be in life. Right.
100%. I mean, personally, I've been journaling for almost 10 years now.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, this is just something that I started back when I was an undergrad, basically a decade ago, where I was at a point in my life where I was feeling a whole different set of feelings and wasn't really sure how I was going to move forward, and I wasn't really sure on where I was going or where I currently was. So I found the best thing that I did back then was just make a Google Doc, just write down the date, and just start writing about what I felt and how I felt at that moment, what I learned recently, and all of that moving forward. Every time there was something big that happened in my life, I wrote it down in journal entry, and I have the benefit now of almost a decade later being able to scroll through that document and just read about where I was 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 10 years ago, and really understand that, wow, things kind of did work out, but it really was just something I had to really just take the time to do so that I wasn't just making mistakes, forgetting I made those mistakes and making the same mistakes again. Because just like if you track your finances and actually start budgeting and start taking a pulse on where your money's going, like I do now, I mean, you can also take a check at where you are in terms of your own life and what you've been thinking recently, feeling recently, and figure out, are there parallels to moments in your own life that happened in the past where these things did come up? And think about all the knowledge that is contained within those pages that you write down. I mean, you can pass that forward into your children's lives or your family's lives and your friends' lives all around you.
Yeah.
But again, it's just like the power of written language. If you actually record these things, then you have tangible advice that you can pass moving forward, which I find extremely, extremely valuable. I mean, if you really think about writings from the past that also can help inspire us now, I mean, Marcus Aurelius, over 2,000 years ago, when he wrote his most famous novel about his experiences in the present and all the stress and all the chaos that was happening around us, if you read that right now, you could apply almost all the points that he said like 2,000 years ago to the present moment.
That's crazy.
Everything worked out for Marcus Aurelius for the most part. I mean, ultimately, humanity moves forward. Time moves forward, societies evolve, empires rise, empires fall. But fundamentally, you read something like that from almost 2,000 years ago and you realize you're not alone. There have been a lot of times where people have felt certain ways, frustrated, confused, scared. And you realize from reading what people wrote from 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, even further than that, that these are just universal human experiences. But fundamentally, they didn't give up. They kept pushing forward, and ultimately they lived the best life that they could, and they figured out everything they could along the way.
Yeah.
But the blessing we have is that they wrote everything down for us to read as future generations.
Right. And that'll be the same for the people in the future that will look at our journal entry and be like, what the what's going on?
Sure.
Just kidding. Just kidding. What was there a journal entry that really surprised you when you reflected?
I think just thinking back now, I can think back to, I guess, when I was just a freshman at UMass, like basically a decade ago. I mean, just having a lot of uncertainty and not being sure of if this was the right school for me, if I was where I wanted to be in life, what I was thinking about career-wise, personally, and all of that going on. And just brushing up on older journal entries gives you the benefit of realizing that everything did work out for the younger version of you. But it took the present version of you a lot of belief in the future that things would work out by making the right decisions then, because your future self will thank you looking back and seeing all the hard work that was put in and all of the challenges that you overcame in the past. And I think that's really, really cool to think about. So yeah, I think fundamentally, if you think about where you are right now and the final version of yourself at the very end of your own life, if these two versions of you and then were able to meet, just think about what you would talk to yourself about from whichever perspective you were looking at yourself at, and try to understand like wow, like there's really so much potential that's possible. We really have to just push ourselves and understand that, hey, slow motion is better than no motion. Even if life does feel hard in the moment, as long as we keep working, we keep moving forward, it all works out.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Something along your journey that, again, you mentioned offline is this idea of comparison.
Sure.
We all know comparison is the thief of joy. Right?
Sure.
We compare ourselves to people that may have more experience than us, or, you know, have been able to curate a more successful path than us. You know, we can compare ourselves to anyone for any sort of reason. When did you realize that comparison was actually something that was hurtful to you rather than something beneficial?
Comparison can sometimes feel like you're looking at someone else who's also running this race in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this person in this race of life could have had a head start. This person could have been running a lot harder. Mm-hmm. This person could also be running with technique that you didn't pick up on until recently or at some point in the future in your life. And it can feel very frustrating sometimes to just think about where you are with where that person is right now, and feeling frustrated that you're not exactly eye to eye, or you're not slightly ahead, or you're not further ahead, and thinking, wow, I sure wish I had those opportunities or I had those privileges. But I'd make the argument that as long as you really just don't give up and you just continuously push yourself, there's no saying that you don't end up running faster in the future. Mm-hmm. Or even if you're comparing a future version of yourself or a past version of yourself of where you are right now, you still are someone who's running hard in that race. I mean, the classic example is, for instance, like the rabbit and the hare.
Right.
The rabbit runs extremely fast in the beginning. It's a rabbit. I mean, heart beats faster, a lot more muscles in the legs, just runs at an incredible speed. But as the story tells us, the rabbit decides to just take a nap somewhere near the end of the race and takes it easy. Mm-hmm. The turtle, continues head down, step by step, at its speed, and ultimately wins the race because it didn't give up along the way, even though it saw how far behind it really was. And you can apply that to who you are as a person. You can apply that to where you currently live in terms of the country that you're a citizen of, or you can think about the company that you're currently working for. All of these principles apply where if everyone just continues working hard, it doesn't matter who's currently leading the race. No one cares about who was running faster or who was ahead. Mm-hmm. People care about who actually finished number one.
Yeah.
And that's something that we can all think about in terms of how we can all try to work at something a little bit more every single day, and to just really continue to just push ourselves. I mean, oftentimes a lot of the success we see in those around us, at least the visible pieces of it, that just reflects years of quiet, unspoken progress and hard work that they just kept to themselves and kept pushing at until they were finally able to get to the point where people could see them for the accomplishments that they did achieve. I mean, like they say, like, you know, people see the glory, they don't see the story. So
can you say that one more time?
I mean, look, people see the glory, but they don't see the story. They always see the visible achievements. They see these Olympic athletes. They see these famous people who started great companies, and they don't understand the situations where they weren't successful, or the disappointments and tragedy that these people all experience in their own life. They just see where they are at this very moment and start thinking, wow, this person's so privileged. They had so much more opportunity than me. I wish I was them. But I just want to remind, you know, all the listeners and all of us that it doesn't matter where you see someone right now in your life. Keep pushing hard, work at what you can right now. And there is a good chance that you will be somewhere better than you are in the future. And it helps even more if you journal all of this and write it down so you have a reference point for the future to compare yourself to at that moment.
Yeah. That mentality is something that I feel like a lot of content creators go through, is because we compare ourselves to the Mr. Beasts in the world,
sure,
the Kai Cenats, the I Show Speed. Like, oh, how did they get to that point? And to us, when we're viewing them right now, it's like, oh, was it fast? And no, like we hear stories about that they were in this game for like a decade before they even start to hit big.
Yeah.
And nobody knew them until now. And that's like you said, taking that to any other principle of your life, just being consistent, keep moving forward, and someday your time will shine. It's just not giving up. And I appreciate that you put that as a reminder to that. Was there a specific event that helped you realize this? Like, were you like working in your career, or were you in school and you're like, this comparison is just not healthy for me, or this me comparing myself to another student or to another coworker, like this is not healthy for me?
I think one of the biggest things that helped me to realize, at least, like, comparison without understanding what led to the progress of someone that you're comparing yourself to, which led them to be where you see them at right now, is something that I really wish I could have told my younger self. Like, for instance, one of the easiest examples that you can think about is just in terms of, high school, when everyone is thinking about, okay, what university do I want to go to? What college do I want to attend? And a lot of times we all try really hard in our own ways, right? We all do the best that we can. We play sports, we take APs, we make sure that we do extracurriculars, we study hard, we take what it takes to really just put ourselves out there. We apply to these universities and we end up where we end up.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you see people around you that got into really good schools, and you might wonder, how did they do that? Or I wonder how this person is just so smart, or how this person is just so equipped and so ready. But what they won't tell you is they spent so much time behind the scenes preparing for that process, and just broadening the perspective bigger than just undergrad or graduate school or any of that. Anytime you see someone around you who's doing well, just think about all the hard work it took behind the scenes, the people they talked to, the mentorship they received, the failures, the successes, that all built itself up so that they could be where they are in front of you right now, talking to you. I don't think anyone will tell you that, success is something that you just wake up and all of a sudden are just finding yourself like surrounded by. I mean, it's something that you really have to wake up, make a conscious effort to get better at something every single day, and really just push yourself a little bit more.
So this is a big question, because through our conversation, I would label you as a high achiever. Not to put labels on you or anything, but I feel like you would agree with.
Hey, we all want to work hard.
Yeah. There's this thing about ambition and contentment. We, as high achievers, love to shoot for the stars.
Sure.
Which is fine. We all should, especially with the tools and opportunities that we have. But when we are not content with what we have, it may lead to some mental health consequences. When did you realize that you need to balance those two versus just straight ambition?
I always think it's good to at least periodically check in on yourself and just do a pulse check in terms of how much you're currently doing at one point in time. You definitely need to understand how much you can take, and when it's time to maybe take a day off and just take a break. Maybe just spend a day just eating at your favorite restaurants, maybe breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Maybe it means calling some friends, making some time in the next few weeks to just catch up over a drink. Maybe it means just starting to think about when your next big trip is going to be, and start looking at flights and plane tickets to really just level yourself and help you to figure out where you are at the moment. Because I think one of the biggest takeaways from just thinking about the past few years was that I always had something to look forward to. I was always working towards something that I also really felt was meaningful, and it wasn't something that I just forced myself to do because it just seemed like the right thing to do. I mean, all of us are really able to accomplish so much, but again, if you are just doing something that you're told to do without really understanding what that would look like for you, or why it would be something that you should be doing, or why you should take it more seriously, it's not going to feel as motivating, or you're not going to feel as driven to do it. But if it co-tangentially helps you to grow in a certain way, then yeah, I'd say if that's something that you're interested in learning more about yourself, go ahead and do it.
Yeah. It's always interesting because when we are always being ambitious, which again, like I said, is a very good thing, we do lose sight of all those wins and milestones and things that we have achieved within ourselves, because it's the what's next mentality. We don't take that time to celebrate our growth.
Yeah.
I think, and that turns to like burnout, because you're just always not realizing, or just you're just all gas, no brakes. For someone that has a hard time finding gratitude or being present in their life, what advice would you give to them?
So this person sounds like to me really could take a second and start thinking about what their efforts are leading to can achieve once they achieve it. If this is just checking boxes for the sake of checking boxes, then I'd make the argument that you already kind of experienced that in the first 2 decades of your life, when you had to go through school and you had to, do certain things like take AP classes or study for exams.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're all adults, I mean, there's no one saying that you have to do anything. You can live a completely uncharted path kind of life as you want. You could sell everything tomorrow, pack up and move to a Pacific island somewhere in a very far and remote place on Earth. I mean, no one's telling you that where you are right now has to be where you are tomorrow. I mean, life becomes a lot more freeing once you realize you have free will.
Mm-hmm.
This also means that you have the potential to do whatever you want. And if you're currently just feeling like, maybe what I'm doing isn't satisfying me, I'd make the argument that maybe you're just not satisfied with where you physically are. Maybe this could mean a change of scenery, living somewhere else. Maybe this could mean going somewhere else and broadening your perspective. Or this could mean potentially talking to someone who's done what you want to do or is where you want to be, and figure out if you like where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And figure out where people go after they've gotten to the point that you want to get to in the future. This is especially true for career. I mean, we all want to be certain roles or titles in our lives, or we want to work in certain fields or industries, but figure out what happens to people once they get in that field or industry, and what happens to them a few years out in the future. One of the biggest questions that you can ask yourself is, okay, let's say you, for instance, get that job you really wanted, or you work in that field you finally are able to work in. What happens to people 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road? Where are they at that point? And if they maybe are actually happier where they are in the future, ask yourself if there's maybe a different way to get to where they eventually were, or think about whether or not you actually want to go down that path.
Yeah, no, I think this forward thinking is very, I would say, done in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when we are not taking the time to realize what we have, it kind of takes away that, what are you working for then?
Yeah.
Right? That forward thinking helps that, what are you working for? And there's always like a what's next, right? It's like when bodybuilders get to the physique that they want.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Am I going to just get fat or do whatever? It's like, for them, it's like, no, I want to figure out how to make this muscle bigger or something like that.
Sure.
You always have to figure out what's next, but do not forget about being in that journey and realizing how much hard work you put in. You talk about your journals and reflecting on them. Once you've done that, you were able to realize about how much you have grown and how much you have grown as a person, how much hard work that you put in yourself, and you bet on yourself.
Yeah.
And that's like the same thing that I'm talking about here about ambition and contentment. It's like, yes, you can always strive for more, but don't forget to look at your wins and look at the milestones that you achieved and how much you've grown as a person, because in a way that will also tell you about how valuable you are as a person in your own self-worth too. Yeah.
And I also make the case that we only know what we currently know. I mean, there's also a chance that if we're all feeling a little discontent with the day-to-day routineness, or just feeling like everything's a little dull, maybe there's just a hobby or an activity that we just haven't discovered yet that could actually bring a lot of joy into our life. I mean, one of my closest friends actually said this thing that I still think about a lot, really. And the thing that they said was, when was the last time you did something for the first time? And that always just resonated with me as soon as I heard it for the first time. I mean, it's really just an interesting idea that, sometimes the routineness or the sameness of life really gets to all of us, where we feel like we kind of already know where we're going, or we know exactly what we're interested in or who we are as a person. But I'd make the argument that that's not true at any point in our life. I mean, like I personally really started getting into traveling a lot more over the past few years. I mean, as of this week, I've been to 31 countries.
Amazing.
But 20 of those countries I visited only in the past 2 years.
Wow.
And this took a lot of planning. This took a lot of understanding. This took a lot of awareness of what I really liked. And ultimately, if you asked me 10 years ago when I started my first journal entry, for instance, like, wow, how many countries do you think you'll get to by the year 2026?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'd say 31. I might say 15. I might say 20. But if you also then ask me, how much would you enjoy the process of going to the 31 countries? I'd say I enjoyed it a lot. And it was just something that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do 10 years ago when I first started.
Where do you stand on, not stand, but how is your work-life balance? How do you balance, fulfilling that other cups in your life, like social and, nutrition, along with, your career and work life?
I mean, fundamentally, make sure that you're taking care of yourself at work, outside of work. Make sure that you do whatever you can to stay in touch with the people in your life that mean the most to you. Obviously, as everyone gets older, we all get busier and we have more commitments. We have only so much time to spend with the people who mean the most to us at the same time. And, there's that saying that, you become the closest combined version of the 5 people you spend the most time with in life. Some of us don't even have 5 people we spend a lot of time with. So that means that you spend the most time with yourself. You better understand yourself, and you better actually enjoy being with the person that you are, because you'll be spending time with them for the rest of your life. So that also means if there are certain things in your life that you're not content with or you're not satisfied with, I'd say, first of all, figure out what that looks like for you, make those changes, and start leaning into becoming a version of yourself that you do like spending time with.
Beautifully said. All right, Evan, I want to get into the practical questions here.
Okay.
For people that don't even have a budget, first-time budgeters, what would you recommend them to do? Do you have a structure, a platform of your own that people can start with, or, something that people can start off with to understand their budget a lot more?
Sure. Personally, I just maintain a really detailed and complicated spreadsheet where I list out all of the money coming into my pocket, to my bank account, into my ability to utilize, and then figure out then afterwards how much of that is going in different directions, how much of that gets paid tax, how much of that gets invested, how much of that is going towards things like subscriptions, how much of that is going towards rent, or in the future a mortgage, how much of that is being spent on your daily life essentials, your utilities, on your one-off purchases, on eating out, on dates, right, all travel and all of that. And then figure out how much money you actually owe other people. Whether that looks like your credit cards, whether it looks like your student loans, your other commitments, and make sure that you just did a combined sum of all of these different variables. Figure out how much money is also being invested and saved, and then figure out, are you in the green or are you in the red? If you are currently able to list out how much you make on a weekly basis with how much you're spending or how much you have to spend on a weekly basis, and if you're on a monthly schedule, you can just divide everything by either multiply it by 12, divide by 52 for the weekly amount, or divide by 4.33 for the amount of weeks for every month in a year. And you'll be able to actually see how much money is leaving your pocket and how much money is being saved in your pocket on a weekly basis. And that's just been extremely, first of all, something I'm interested in actually seeing and tracking, but also just good to think about in terms of, okay, where is this money going? Do I really need this in my life? And if that means canceling a couple of subscriptions because you don't feel like it really is worth the $5 a week or so a month, or $20 a month, then you can automatically have an extra $20 in your pocket every single month to do whatever you want with. Maybe to save, maybe to invest, maybe to put aside for a rainy day fund, maybe to do something with that you actually enjoy a lot more. Like just making the most of every single day. Because, I mean, fundamentally, we spend a lot of time at work. It would be nice if the fruit of our labor doesn't immediately just disappear without us enjoying it, right?
Yeah.
We should at least know where it's going.
Right. Do you divide like your expenses via like, eating out, miscellaneous, or like do you have like, paint me a picture of, what that budget looks like. Do you have a single line item for every like?
Yes, I try to keep everything as detailed as possible.
Okay.
So within this detail, I mean, you have a big category such as vacation, just like a vacation overview. And then within like a vacation overview / traveling, you would then have a subcategory such as the actual vacation flights. How much did it cost to get there, come back? The vacation accommodation. How much did it spend to actually stay there? And then you would have line items such as vacation food. What did you spend on eating out? Vacation drink. What did you spend on beverages? Vacation activities. How much did you spend on these activities? And then ultimately, once you sum together all of these subcategories, you have your definitive spend for the actual year that you're looking at, the actual quarter you're looking at, and the actual week that you're looking at. And what all this is very useful for is rolling it forward into an overall budget view.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the year, I always set a budget for how much money I want to spend for each of these big categories. And throughout the course of the year, I can then see, okay, this is how much I've spent so far as a percentage of this category as a whole. If I'm going over, okay, maybe it's time to put the brakes on.
Yeah.
If I'm going under, okay, maybe I can either reallocate this money somewhere else, or in the future, I know that I typically am happy and content living on this amount of money to begin with. I'm not forcing myself to spend more on eating out if I feel like I can make the same food at home.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So it's just good to keep in mind versus I was, especially when I was not tracking this stuff. And for instance, like when I was living in New York for the 2 or so years I was there, I mean, eating out every single week, checking out bars and restaurants. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You have a lot to talk about. You have a lot of pictures. But you really ask me if I knew how much I spent for those experiences those years ago, would I've rather used that money for other purposes or gotten in to the stock market in a bigger position earlier? I'd lean towards saving for the future and investing a lot more, 100% of the time.
Yeah. That surplus, what do you usually do with it?
Definitely have a lot of automatic processes to just have your money invested and move to where it needs to be as soon as the paycheck hits. But also, if you have cash at the very end, it's not bad to also just start saving towards an emergency fund, hopefully within the 3 to 6 month range.
Yeah.
Because then you realize if you have enough money that you have aside for a rainy day, it doesn't matter if something happens to you. You will be able to just survive any short-term changes in your daily life, and it won't keep you up at night, and it'll save you a lot of stress.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, whatever that surplus you do with, it's always, honestly, I wouldn't even say it's like you can play around with it. I think it's advised to really put it into your long-term financial wealth. And to get into that, for people that are first learning how to build their long-term wealth, what would be like the first step you would say?
Definitely take a look at how much money is coming in. Figure out immediately how much money you're spending on a monthly basis, and then figure out where that could be adjusted and where you currently are. So for instance, if someone is constantly just living paycheck to paycheck, they have money in their checkings or savings, it never grows any bigger than what they see on a monthly or yearly basis. But their life kind of feels the same. Not much changes. It kind of just feels pretty routine, even though, money keeps coming in, but it just goes somewhere and you're not really sure where. I'd say that's the second step, to then figure out where that money is going that you could change so that it goes somewhere more meaningful that you actually tangibly can see. And also just third step, just having that money invested somewhere or used to pay down high interest debt to make sure that you're in a good, sound financial standing. I mean, there's probably millions of borrowers around the world who all have loans of some kind, whether student loans, whether mortgage loans, whether personal loans, who are just afraid to look at how much they overall owe, right? And not understanding how interest rates work is one of the most dangerous things that someone can just be unaware of. I mean, people say, okay, like I'll invest in the stock market, maybe generate a yearly return of about, historical average of 11%. Sounds great. But then they also currently carry a balance of credit card debt, which runs at about 20 to 30%. They'd be better off just paying off that credit card debt first and not even thinking about investing for the future. I mean, it's just such a difference in terms of how much money you're technically earning from investments with how much you owe through interest. It's to keep an eye on.
So your best advice would probably handle the debt first. For
figure out what interest rate your debt is currently at, how much you owe, how much you currently spend on that debt, and figure out what your monthly payments are as a proportion of how much you actually have to pay as a whole. I mean, you hear these stories about people who have student loans. They don't have a good idea of how much they owe. They don't have a good idea on how high the interest rates are. And they just know that the money leaves their bank account every single month. Then they check after a few years and they've barely made a dent, or they owe even more than what they actually borrowed in the first place. And the first reaction is always to turn on the camera and get all shocked and confused on how suddenly owe so much. But in reality, it's just because of simple math. I mean, the interest just grows the amount of money you owe faster than the amount of money you were paying it. I mean, it's one of the biggest just forces in the universe. I mean, yes, compounding growth is a thing for both your investments and your debt. I mean, you can owe a lot more money than you actually borrowed in the beginning just because you have to pay back the lender more than you're currently able to pay.
Right.
And it just grows faster than the amount you're paying at the moment.
Yeah, it's that distinction between like obviously like principal and interest, and how the interest can add on to what you owe.
Yes.
With investments, obviously there's a lot of people say, have a Roth IRA account.
Yeah.
HSA account. How does you don't have to go into detail, but to have a good plan of long-term wealth, like with retirement.
Yeah.
What's the right word? Is it the plan? What kind of accounts should you have? And what should you be doing within those accounts?
I'll preface this by saying that this is not financial advice, and I am not a registered financial advisor, but I will at least give the advice that thinking about investing is the most important thing that someone can start doing. And then the second step is figuring out how much money they actually have to invest. And then third step is just figuring out what vehicles they have to invest with. And there are a lot of materials online with trusted financial advisors who can answer this question in greater detail. But at a very high level, I'll say definitely just understand how much money you have coming in. Figure out how much money you're comfortable with investing. And then third, figuring out where that money could best be invested in, what kind of investment vehicle, and then figure out where you actually want to invest that money, I think are the four main steps to making sure that you're on at least the beginning of a sound financial journey.
Well, Evan, I just want to say this is a beautiful conversation about, your path, your journey, what you have learned along about, understanding about comparison. And also building like financial health and how money can be viewed, not money, but looking at money as a tool rather than something that can hurt you or always like, disposable. I feel like you've just put out so much valuable wisdom out there, and I appreciate, your time and coming on. And I hope you had a great time and a great conversation about just what we talked about in the past hour or so. Sorry. You had.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And fundamentally, I just want all the listeners of the podcast and for all of us to keep in mind that, life isn't always very clear in terms of what we should be doing or what we could be doing in some cases. But I think fundamentally, it's still important to realize this life is still a beautiful opportunity to really make the most of it. And as we should all push and strive to be the highest version of ourselves, we can also think about how we can really just understand what it takes to get to that next level and just push ourselves a little bit more each and every single day. Because fundamentally, like I've always believed, all of us are artists and our lives are our greatest work. And really understanding that and what it takes to make something that you're really proud of by the end of it, I think is a beautiful thing. It's something that we will, especially myself, all just take the time to think about with detail every single moment that we have. But I think fundamentally, if we just all wake up and we all just work hard and do what we can to just be a little bit better every single day, we can all do amazing things that the version of ourselves 10 years ago may have thought was impossible. So thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. All right, we're getting into the big 3 questions. These are the last 3 questions that can leave a final impact on our viewers. And the first question I have for you is, what's something, a quote or a phrase that helps you through time of struggle?
There's this really good quote by Michael Jordan that I think about a lot whenever I consider doing something that is challenging or I'm thinking is going to be something that really stretches me. And the quote that I think of is when he once said, I can accept failure because everyone fails at something, but I can't accept not trying. And that quote has always resonated with me over the past 10, 15, 20 years because it's just such a profound thing to think about. I mean, if we don't try, who knows what'll happen?
Yeah. We never want to be in a position to just wonder about what if,
Take the chance.
Yeah.
And also too, like just like in the case of investing where you want to capture as much volatility as you can while you're younger and have a longer time horizon. Think about that with your own life. I mean, when we're younger, we should take as many chances as we can because you capture a lot more of the upside if things go well. And you also don't suffer as much of a downside if things don't work out as well.
Yeah, for sure. My second question to you is, what's something you can be kinder to yourself about?
I think one thing I can be kinder to myself about is just understanding that, time is inevitable. Every day is another day. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we might look back and reminisce about certain moments in our lives, but understanding that we are in the present now and the past is nothing more than a memory that helps drive the direction of where we are to create the future that we want is something that has always just been encouraging to me.
Well, that was very profound. My last question to you is, if someone was struggling with their own self-worth,
sure,
what is something that you would say to them?
All of us are valuable. We can all do so much. Recognize that where you are right now and how you feel right now does not define who you are and what you can be in the future.
Well done. All claps to you, Evan. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and coming on and being vulnerable and just sharing your stories. Yeah, guys, if you liked any part of this episode, please make sure you clip it, tag me and Evan in it. And as always, let's fall in love with the process of getting better every day and becoming the highest version of ourselves. I love y'all.